Good evening. Good evening, Missy. Viral Bank, I'm fine. How are you? So we'll start in 5 minutes. Yeah. Am I audible and visible? Please do respond. Am I audible and visible? Yes, 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 yes. So what's the count of this today's session? It's fine. Yes. Hello all. Welcome to this third day of React Sprint, where in this given session we are going to learn about what is this use case of React in the view of components, and also you'll see about what is the web bundler, and also we'll try to utilize this web bundler and try to understand a structure of any given React project, right? So can we go ahead? But before going ahead, I just want to ask one question that can anyone like summarize what we have learned in the previous session? Like what are the topics that we have learned in the previous session, so that we'll go ahead and we'll start learning the process. Props, reconciliation and building components. Nitin Goratla, reconciliation and building components, yes, but not reconciliation. How to create components, how to create props. Also passing the props, yes. Specifically we use bundlers, yes. Yes, Vanshdeep. Anyone needs to add some more things that what we have learned in the previous session? Okay. Yes, yes, React DOM. Very good new scientist. Very good new scientist. Yes, Mahesh, I actually give the brief about this particular bundlers thing in this today's session. You learn about the thing, bundlers and sort of a thing. Actually, closure is one such a mechanism that adaptable that is actually present in the JavaScript, where it helps us to get the variables even if it is out of the scope. So if in a long JavaScript code, sometimes your variables might be out of the scope to access, but closure helps us to get it. Not to be more precise of out of the scope, but sometimes these variables might not be actually present in the actual memory, that they are be stored in the some other part of the memory that will be grasped by this thing. Yes, next wave boys, one thing without understanding the basics, we cannot go ahead and start the project, right? So that's why I'm waiting for today, most probably tomorrow, and I'll start the project. So can we start? Tell me, go ahead. I'll just start my session and we'll go ahead. Yes. Yes, go ahead, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, just a minute. Yes. Um, yeah. So, today, I'll go ahead and I'll say exit and I'll create it. So first day we're going to learn about few important things like about the use state, how that use state actually utilized and sort of thing, and also we try to build one to-do application by using this use state and sort of thing. But before going to use state and this white and other stuff, um, I just want to discuss about few details about this use state application because we're going to understand how this entire React actually manages this state level variables, and also I just want to show how can we manage multiple of such components at one single place, and what are the use of bundlers and how many different types of bundlers that are actually present. So I just want to discuss about all of these things. So I have taken one HTML thing where I'll say states. Now, okay, so I need to get the things right away done. So I'll go to this thing. Let's say this. Search for CD and React. Get the CD and links of the React. So today will be the last class. We'll be using this entire CDN concept of the React itself. So yeah, I'll copy it. So inside this, I'll say HTML. Instead of say, I can say the first link is about the React. Second thing is about React DOM. So React, the purpose of the React is an algorithm that manipulate the UI. React DOM is a support that actually supports React. So, and apart from this, we also have this thing known as Babel thing. So, Babel CDN, yes. Babel standalone. Let's scroll it down. Yes, I'll copy it. So, instead, I also use this Babel thing. So, which is nothing but, okay, sorry. Which is actually nothing in the form of Babel. So, I'm going to use. So I'll use Babel, which is actually a transpiler where this divides JS and HTML from JSX. So I also include this given below Babel link, and inside that one standard rule is that we also have one div element with this ID value is known as root, and below that div element we'll use script tag CRIPT script tag type of text / Babel, and inside this given thing we'll start writing the code. We'll start writing the code itself. So yeah, so yes, okay. Let's say we just want to need to build a code itself. You need to build counter itself. Sir, when will you start project? Because interview. Yes, next way, boss. I'll try to include this. Today we are going to discuss about use state hook. Then we're going to understand about different hooks. Like tomorrow, most probably you learn about use effect hook. Day after tomorrow, you learn about the project. While building the project, you learn about some other hooks like useref and use reducer and sort of a thing, and few other hooks. So yeah, sir, please cover React animation in end of our sprint. CCBP React.js support projects. It is actually not possible to cover animation part in the end of the sprint. So yeah, that's it. Like if you have any chance to contact the team itself, my team, just try to you know create a poll in your own WhatsApp group so that your group actually, like whenever this session is whenever you ask them to create these kind of extra sessions, they'll actually think about it and they'll just create it. So it's about, you should ask them, we should not tell them. Like it's not like I should not be teaching them like we have to teach animations, but you should be asking them. React is just a library, Vanshdeep Verma, and React hooks are part of it. Do not worry about it. I'll teach what is meant by React hooks. So let's say, let's build a counter itself, where I have a plus operator to increase the I think plus operator to increase the value in counter, whereas negative operator, negative sign, to be more precise, sign, negative sign or negative button should reduce the value in counter. Button. So let's try to first kind of build it in static thing. So one important thing I just want to tell is that I'll come down. I read these important points that we need to, you need to import in your learning thing, is that first point. Whenever you are building anything in React, build it in what I can say, static thing. Build it in static site. Build it in static website form. So I'm going to follow the same thing where our counter will have this kind of a structure. To be more precise, I'll do this one important thing. Um, I'll say function. So function counter, because it's counter, where I'll say inside of this function I'll simply say return a particular thing, where I can say div element in between this given div element we have this button element, where we have this button element with this thing known as plus, and we have this one thing known as span element, where we have something known as some value, let it be 0 at the initial value. Finally we have let's try to wait. Let's try to have another button, minus button. So now I'm going to render this particular thing as this particular thing, react dom dot render. I'll say this in counter. So this particular component I'm actually returning it in the DOM itself. So where I'll say that document dot get element by ID will say root. So now let's try to go live and check what will be the result. Yes. So wait. So instead I'll give the value to it. You can clearly see this is the counter. Okay, we'll give some kind of a styling to it. So I'll give this thing as class, give some kind of a styling to it. I'll give this span value, to be something known as count. So which I'm going to include this inside the head tag. Inside the head tag, I'll try to write some styling for this particular thing to look more elegant. I'll say style element, where I'll say dot class is actually equals to, let's try to give the padding, or I can say that margin 30 pixel, or run the code. The margin is not applying, then let's try to apply. Sorry, should be the value of counter, count, or run the code. Yes, this is the actual code that you are actually seeing. So instead giving the count, let's try to give few stylings to it. So class counter, where I'll say dot counter is actually having some kind of a margin, no border. I'll say 2 pixel or 4 pixel solid black, and kind of a padding of 30 rem. Yeah, let's try. Okay, padding of 10 rem would be sufficient. Yes, padding of 10 rem would be sufficient, and let's try to give margin for this given particular. Okay, margin, no need of margin. Now we have this one single element, this counter, where we have to do one thing, that whenever we click on these given buttons, the counter value should be implemented. So that's our agenda. So for that we have actually written this entire code. We have built a static version of this particular code, but this entire thing is actually static. My main agenda is where when I press this plus button, the value inside the counter should be increases, and whereas this second particular thing, where when this some operation of negative thing, whenever the negative button has been pressed, then the count value in the counter has to be decreased. This is a standard format that I want to do. Now I want to explain this one important thing, that in React we can manipulate the state. I mean, to be more precise, we can manipulate items using the state variables, using a thing known as state, which is nothing but, as React follows the state variables, which is nothing but I need to declare a variable such that it should be a state variable. But before understanding how can we create a state variable, let's try to understand this one important thing, where I'll say that console.log I'll say this one important thing, which is actually known as React. Let's try to find what is it React that is getting us for us. So given this till, okay, there is this one thing. Okay, fine. Sorry, I made a mistake. That whenever you are dealing with the React, the class is actually dealt as class name. So it's not class, it's a class name. So yes. Now there is this warning. We're going to see this given warning in few minutes, but at this point of time, leave it. So now we have that React is one such an algorithm that is a JavaScript code, and it is giving us these kind of a methods: children, component, fragment, profiler, clone element, create element, and if you scroll down, we have this one particular thing known as use state. So let's check this particular thing, use state, where it is taking that the value of initial state itself. So how can we use this use state is that, let's say I create a value of const count is actually equals to the value of let's say react dot use state of 0. So here by default React actually stores this given particular value of 0. This is what nothing but initial state. So what is meant by initial state? It is nothing but this given value. Now instead of this 0 value, I could have easily kept this given particular value as count. Whenever we have implemented this JavaScript variable in the in the HTML code, this actually is nothing but a state variable, where this is now taken care by this use state by the React itself. See, if you observe in this given particular console.log, wait a minute. Use state is actually a method for this given object of React, for this given object of this first given object of React. So that's why I have utilized it in this given format. It is actually a method. That's why I have utilized in this given format. Now let's try to understand what exactly is meant by use state. So I'll say that so whenever we say this thing known as use state of 0 is the initial value of that state variable. So here in the above example I said 0 in the use state thing, where it is nothing but count initial values 0. That is what it is meant by. Now in general, the use state actually returns as an array, which is nothing but, let's say if I do this thing known as return dot use state of thing, okay, it is actually reading something as a null, as a use 0. Okay, it is uncaught error, use state reading null properties. Okay. Instead of writing this console.login to show it, I'll use this given. Wait a minute. I'll say that I'll write it here that use state by default gives us array of items as first argument, and it gives something which I can say that it gives a function that helps to update the state variable, which is nothing but, let's say in this given example, use state is actually giving us these two things. One is this particular thing, and I'll say set count, where this react dot use state is actually giving this particular value, which is nothing but, here count value is actually equal to the value of 0, where this count value is the state variable, which is meant that count or count variable, I can say that count is overviewed by React algo itself, which is nothing but, every time React actually follows these state variables, because as we have discussed in the previous session that React uses these state variables to manipulate the UI itself. So that's why whenever we give or whenever we create any kind of a state variable, it is nothing but the React actually focuses on these state variables. It constantly watches on these variables. So that's what it is meant by count variable. But by default this use state actually gives us these two things. This first argument as an array, and it gives a second argument as a function that helps us this to integrate, to update this variable or state variable, which is nothing but this set count is actually a function that is given by this use state to update our state variable count, Now if I run the code, if I see the code, you see still the value is there, and whenever there is this on click event happens on this given button, on click event happens in this given button, I am going to say increment, which is nothing but increment is actually a function. Increment is actually a function. So whenever you are writing any given functions in React, try to use arrow notations. Arrow notations are very much important when you are giving these kind of handler events, event handlers, to be more precise, these kind of event handlers. So here increment is nothing but an event handler. So I will say const increment I'll say for this given first particular const increment, I write one arrow function. Now I'll say console.log incremented, which is nothing but whenever this function is invoked, then in console we print that this function is actually called, which is nothing but, so let's try to click on this given button press and see whether this console log is getting actually called or not, because whenever we click on this given button, this function should actually be giving this console.log, which is nothing but incremented in the console itself. That's why I'm checking whether this increment function is actually working or not. So for that I'll say that, go to it, whenever I click on this thing, whenever I click on this plus button, it is telling that yes, it is actually incremented, which is nothing but the link between this on click event and this given function is actually been created. Now after this on click event, I say that whenever we click any given kind of a thing, right, on this plus button, our count variable should be increased. So we use this set count, which is actually given by this use state to update this state variable count. We use this set count and we'll say count plus plus, which is nothing but whenever I am incrementing the things, whenever this function is getting invoked, which is nothing but whenever this button is getting clicked, then this function increment will be called. Once this function incremented will be called, then they will print something incremented on the console, and finally we use this set count statement to update the variable, which is nothing but here set count is actually incrementing the state variable count count. So go ahead, close it. So let's say if I click on it, it is telling me that there is kind of an error. Acha, what is this type? Count is read only. Okay, count is read only. Is there anything that we changed? Oh, sorry, count plus 1. So count cost. Let's see what is the actual result. Press. You can clearly see this increment is actually working. How many times I am clicking, you can clearly see this increment is actually working. And I just want to implement the same kind of a thing. This particular thing, whenever I click this minus button, this value should be reduced. If you observe this code, let's try to understand the flow of this particular thing. Let's try to understand what exactly happens here. Whenever on this given plus button, when there is an on click event, which is nothing but when this button is actually clicked, then this increment function is actually being called. Once this increment function has been actually called, which is nothing but it actually goes, our controls actually goes from this particular line to this given particular line. Once after this increment function is called, we actually print something known as increment or incremented, and after that we'll say set count value, where we are increasing the count value to +1. Now let's try to understand how the relationship between the state variable and this function which is used to update the state variable has works. So for that I'll take this one simple comment. Now by default we know that this count initially is actually storing this given value of 0, but whenever we use this set count value, so set count or set count function, to be more precise, actually updates the value of state variable count, after which, after updation, I can say after update, this count value is changed from 0 to the new value. And one important thing is this entire line, this first line, which is nothing but, I'll write it here, this line executes only one time. This line executes only one single time, which is nothing but, after its execution, then this given process actually happens, which is nothing but this initial value which is actually present inside this braces will be assigned to this state variable, like here count is equal to 0, and after that we go on doing this particular thing. Similarly, let's try to say whenever there is a click on this given button, minus, I'll mention this on click, I'll say decrement. So decrement. So I should be telling you that cons decrement is actually also another function that is invoked whenever there is an on click event happens on this given minus button. Once it is on click, I'll write console log to check whether this given particular function is actually invoked or not. So decremented. So this is to check it. Let's say we are on this given thing. So check it. Yes, whenever I'm clicking it, it is telling me that it is decremented. Yeah, this button is actually working. So I can include this particular thing known as set count, because set count is one such a function that is given by the use state in order to manipulate this given particular state variable. So now check again. So whenever I am clicking plus, you can clearly see the value is getting incremented. Whenever I am clicking minus, you see the value is getting decremented. So there is no limit till which we are actually incrementing and decrementing this thing. So we have seen how this use state hook, which is given by this React algorithm, actually works in general purpose. Now anyone has any kind of a doubt, please do cover doubts in this given point of thing, so that we can go ahead. Okay, I missed different lot of components. Shivashankar, we can use, sir, which CSS to use, vanilla or Tailwind? Normal CSS will be fine. Tailwind is actually a framework, so do not worry about it. Functional component is actually best component, Mahesh. Once Deep Verma, we cannot use that single tag. Though at this point of time, we cannot use it. At this point of time, no, because we are actually dealing with the Bible itself, right? So no, in this, in the rough sheet of HTML code, right? That's why we cannot do it. But in general purpose, yes. Misal Vamsi, related to the cache components, you'll get an idea. Don't worry about it. Once try to understand the things in functional view of component, then you'll eventually understand this class view component. That's not a big deal. Lanox, can you just ask question once more? I couldn't get it. So Viral Bank is asking that, sir, you not create React app space. Why? Viral Bank, I'll just come to that create React app, but at this point of time, let's try to understand what are the difficulties that we are facing when we are actually trying to code without using these create React app. So, uh, understood till this point, because it's very much important to understand this one given concept. Use state, if you understood clearly, that's it. That's it. We are almost done. We are almost done. Clear? Or I can say that there is, I think, this is small change. Instead of telling gives us, or I'll say returns. Returns us the array of items. I can say array of items. Instead of saying array of items, I could say array of um, state variables as first argument, and it gives setter function. To be more precise, this is setter function that helps us to update the state variable itself. Till this point, anyone has any kind of doubt? Sir, we can use set state also. There is quite a difference between use set state and use state. So at this point of time, do not go that thing. Sir, when we are actually integrating backend and frontend, it will be done in Node.js sprint. It will be done in Node.js sprint. So now we have created one single component. If you observe this one single component, now let's try to understand how can we create these multiple components. So for that, um, I'll create this particular thing. Wait, I'll close it. Mul index.html. So let's see how can we create this multiple index things. This is something what I'm going to copy this entire head element all together. Mm, this entire thing. So I'll say that this thing. I'll remove it. So this is my use state. I mean, sorry, this is my code where now we are going to create the same kind of a code, but with every time when you're where I'll say type text or Babel. Once in this given script tag, I have my this entire function thing, so which I'll take it. Um, I'll take this entire code. Let's try to remove these things because you have already have this kind of thing. So Yes. So yeah, we'll say multiple counters. How can we create this kind of multiple counters? So for which remove this class of count. So it is of unnecessary thing. Remove it, remove it. Instead, I will be telling that which I will be saying that dot counter margin dash top. I'll say 2rem 22rem kaadu 2rem. So this is kind of a styling that I'm actually giving. So I'll say border bottom 2 pixels solid gray. And finally, we have this padding bottom. One. Let's try to mm, run the code itself. So let's say what will the result? We got our particular padding counter kind of a thing where we are actually increasing the values and decreasing the values. So this is our counter. Okay, I'll do this one then. We have this counter value. Let's say if I want to create a multiple of such this counter values, such counter values, what I'll be doing? I'll be simply saying, or I'll be simply creating this kind of another function where I'll say that function counter parent. Create another function. I'll return this one thing. And say that I'll say counter. Mm, mm. So I'll copy the same thing. So here I'll call counter parent, and this is actually counter parent. Now check it. Yes, now we have three counters where this counter component itself we have already written here. But we're using this small individual components to make a large component itself, like this given particular thing. So here one important thing I just want to tell you is that uh, we use these small components to make it very large. Like this given particular component, where let's check whether all these are working. Yes, these all are working. Yes. Yep. But let's say we have all these counters. I'll reload it. All these counters, which I want this one important thing, which is nothing but for this given counter value, I want the value to be 0. Similarly, I want for this given value of 5 to be more precise as starting value of counter, to be more precise as initial value of counter. Initial value of counter. I want this final counter to be having the value of 10. So as an initial value. So let's say 5 as initial value of counter. So how can I achieve it? how can I achieve it? Is that there is this interesting thing where we'll be actually sending props to them, props to these individual things, which is nothing but I can say that I'll send this particular prop index whose value is actually equals to the value of 1, and I'll say value is was another property that I just want to, another prop I just want to give for this counter component, where I'll say this initial value to be 0. So now I use this concept of props and pass these props to each other component, because React actually helps us to do more complex things, because even Facebook is actually built on React. Entire Facebook is now shifted to React, which is nothing but React has much speciality than just creating this simple, on-click event and including these functions. So that's why I'm actually changing these values. So the values to be 2, index value of 2, and say this initial value of this given counter should be 5. Similarly, this index value, which is actually equal to the 3, and I'll say this value to be 10. Now after passing these props, I'll go to this one particular thing. Whereas I'll tell in this given particular way where all these props are individual items, all these props for this different respective components are individual items, which is nothing but if I have a state variable assigned for only these given props, then it will be very easy for me to track the things. That's why I'm assigning the state variable, the concept of state variable here, which I'll say const. I'll say instead of writing it as a state variable, I'll write it in the normal format, index comma value, which are actually equals to the props. So actually equal to the props. So now the props is actually nothing but, if you want to check what is the props, I'll console log it. Console log props, where you now see how this index values will actually be turned into an object itself. So run the code, go to console. This is 3 object, where the object has index value as equal to 1 and value is equal to 0. So which is nothing but this given particular value. Similarly, this next 2 props are separate object. Go and check again. Check this object. You have this index value as 2, value of 5. So this is even this third set of props are actually kind of again another object. Right? So now I am getting these different objects all together in this given particular code. So now how can I use this given particular props inside this particular given elements itself? Is that I'll say okay, where I'll try to, okay fine, I'll try to write an h2 element altogether. Okay, I'll write a h2 element and I'll say counter number is actually equals to this value of index value, and this value which I am actually passing, I'll use this given particular value to be at this given point of time, or else wait, I'll show it in this given way. Yes, let's say this particular thing, this counter value has been updated. Now I'll say instead of using this 0 as default value, I'll say default value. This value prop which I am getting, I'll pass it into this use state function or use state hook, where is use state assign this value to this state variable count, now, which is nothing but this given particular thing, or I'll say wait, this given particular thing here at this point of time, count is a state variable that is actually equal to the value of value. Actually equal to the variable value by default. So after applying the things, now you see that these respective different counters where we wanted them to be in this thing, that the first counter should actually start with the counter value as 0. See, the first counter has the value of 0 as a starting point. Similarly, the next one has the value, should have the value of 5. So it has started with the value of 5. Similarly, the third counter should have the starting value or the initial value of the counter to be 10. So we have done the same thing using this particular thing known as thing. So now we have used or utilized this given props or set of props. I can say um, set of props in order to actually get this initial component rendered. So I want to tell these few lines regarding the code where I'll say that um, use cases of state with respect to a component with respect to component is to make it dynamic. That is the use case of your use state hook. Coming to the second, we can create, like, these are the main points, so that's why I'm writing them. We can create complex component where we can say that by using multiple uh, independent component. Okay, there are few questions. Okay, let me address that. I'll just finish this thing and I'll go ahead. Props, we all know props are actually used for this, to pass the data into the children component. To be more precise, props to pass data to a children component. So majority or majorly I can say the data specific to components. So I have used the props item in order to send or set the initial value of these respective counters at this, using this given particular thing known as use state. If you observe this thing, you can have this thing. This is the counter number 1, 2, 3. So I have utilized these props and rendered them onto this particular output using this H2 element like this, and also gave this initial value or initialize this value for every given counter. So till this point, anyone has any kind of a doubt? React Sprint, Nitin. It is actually React Sprint. Misalamsi, that actually we need to define 3 use states. Instead, here I have used this one simple thing. I got it as prop and include it as an initial element. In one single use state. So it solved my problem. So till this, anyone has any kind of a doubt, like how do we actually doing these kind of things and sort of understood? Because this is very crucial to understand the fundamental thing, right? If you have any doubt, you can ask me. Otherwise, you tell me, go ahead. I'll go ahead. Understood. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Okay. What are inline conditions, Lanoix? Can you be more precise? Um, okay, ternary operator you're asking about, conditional branching operator. Actually, I've covered detailedly covered them in JavaScript sprint. So once you can check the sprint recordings, you can find it. That's completely related to the JavaScript operator. So, okay, Chandu, explain about hooks. Okay. We'll go to the hooks part. Don't worry about it. Why these actually called as an thing known as hooks, and why use state use effect are the primary or prominent hooks that are actually taught in React. We will learn. Mhm. Any kind of a doubt still? I'll explain. Be with Navi. I'll explain. So functional component, I'll say that here with using a function, we are actually returning HTML itself. Class component would be different, where we use classes to get this entire data of HTML. So that would be more complex because previously they have used this class components, but it is getting more complex. That's why they have turned into functional components. I don't worry, Vanshdeep. We are going to cover each and every part. This is only introduction of how the things actually work, the base of React. Once you are comfortable with the base of React, you directly go to it and understand the project itself. That's what you'll do. Yeah, we will make projects with hooks. We actually made projects with hooks itself. Yes, UseState is actually a hook. Do not worry, Nitin. I'll try to cover as much as possible about this hooks, the important hooks at least in this given time span. Then once we are done with the hooks, like we build the project, we learn it. We build the project, we learn it. Because these initial sessions are very much initially focused upon to create the foundation. That's why I'm actually teaching all of this foundational chunks, and we directly deep dive into this concept of creating the project. So any kind of a doubt still, if I can continue, just tell me. Go ahead. I'll go ahead. Sir, which language you know? Around 8 to 9 languages. C, C++, Java, Python, JavaScript, Golang, Rust. Hindi also, sorry. I mean, programming language or normal languages. Conversation, actually, I can understand Hindi, but I cannot speak Hindi. Only conversation, Telugu, English, Hindi to I can understand. So let's go ahead. Yes, please go ahead, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Now, we have seen how can we create these multiple components at this given particular thing. So let's try to understand or create another component where I'll say we will have one input container where that input container should give us the state, or that input container actually should give us this what I can say, data to be printed. Like, instead of, I can say data to be printed. Yeah, let's take this input bar. In that input bar, whenever there is any kind something known as count, we need to actually count those number of things, which is nothing but I'll create in this given particular way, mm, which I'll say input counter to be more precise, 3. Okay, 3 underscore input counter. So this thing is should actually be renamed. So I'll say rename null index. So this would be probably renamed as, so now input dot thing, where I'll say shift. You actually copy these elements, at least these 3 elements. So this is about this particular element itself. We got these things. Finally, we have a div element. I'll say hash root with a div element, no content inside of it, and there is this script tag where I'll say type should be src, sorry, type should be text, and it's of Babel. So inside this thing we have this thing known as um, else we have this function uh, counter, or I'll say input counter, where we are actually going to take the input and presenting it onto this given particular string. So I'll say I'll return at this given point of time. First, my main agenda is whenever I'm building anything in the React, first I'll build the static part of it, and then we'll go ahead and we'll write any kind of a function, state, any sort of a thing. So for that, we'll say that okay, there is this div element. Inside there is div element. We have our input tag. Input tag. Mm, where I'll say type is actually text. After this input tag, I have my button, which actually tells me that button to be I'll say set, and after finally we have this one another div element, or else instead of placing them here, I'll place it as button. Sorry, I shouldn't be writing it. Cut it. Let's try to create another div for these elements. Where I write button, I'd say increment, I'll span it with this particular thing known as span, as I'll give this values as count, because previously we actually used this count thing. Similarly, we'll say we have done with this particular thing. Let's try to write these few increment and decrement. So let's say const increment is actually a function where I'll say instead that I need to actually have this particular thing known as const count comma set count. This is the previous code that I'm actually rewriting the thing. Instead of copy pasting it, I'll say react dot use state, where I'll initially send the value to the value as 0. Yes, now I'll say set count value is actually equals to count plus 1 const count minus 1. So these are the things that we need to do. I think we did it. Any changes? I think no. Um, let's try to it. Oh, sorry. Let's try to click go live first. I forgot it. Say okay. Anything that we did wrong? Instead, I'll say input count. Sorry. We haven't done this React dot render. Sorry, React dot render. Sorry, where we'll pass this component of this input counter, and I'll say document dot get element by ID. I'll say root. On the code. Okay, I keep it here. Let's try to see what is that one mistake that we did. Oh, it's React DOM, not React, by the way. React DOM. Now we have this thing. Okay, increment. This itself should be cut. It should be the value of press on click. Copy, then say on click should actually be this given value. I'll remove this decrement thing. Yes, now yes, whenever we click these values, yes, we have this thing. But let's say if I give the value of 10 and if I click on this given button, the counter value should actually be implemented. This count value actually should be implemented with this given particular value. So that's my main agenda. Now, how can I achieve this given particular thing of just passing this data from this input element passing the data from the input element and directly onto this given counter. How can I do it? That's actually the thing that I need to achieve it. So in order to do that, we have to understand few things, which is nothing but for this given input element, where whenever we add any kind of data inside of it and click on this set button, we need to actually go ahead and include these values all together. So for that, I'll say for this given input element, which is actually in type of text, I'll say that give the value to be I'll say the thing as value, because yes, I'll say it as value instead of changing this as values. Oh, okay, wait a minute. Let's try to create this kind of a altogether particular variable itself. This entire state variable, I'll say value and set value. Using this again state variables, I'll be saying that react dot use state. React dot use state. So I'll say initially this value to be equals to the value of 0. By default, whenever my page runs, this input value should be actually equal to the value is equal to 0. That's why I give this value as value is equals to value. So for this input element, let's say if instead of having this value is equal to value, I'll say welcome. Now check. You see, by default, our particular input tag have this given particular element of welcome. Similarly, if I want to change this given value and keep it assign this given value to this particular thing on a state variable, then the default value for this given particular state value or state variable is actually nothing but double quotations. Given double quotations. So this value initially will have the state value, will have the value of this particular thing initially double quotations. I mean, to be more precise, this is actually an empty string. That's why every time your screen loads, input will actually be in empty. So that's why I have utilized it. After that, which I just want to tell that whenever there is this increment, I am actually incrementing it, decrementing it. But the one important thing I just want to mention is whenever there is an on change event, which is nothing but for this given input element, where actually, to be more precise, I'll write this comment here because it's very important to understand what this input element is actually doing it. This is nothing but this input tag we are handling. So wait a minute. We are handling the UI update of input with the state. That is the main agenda of why we are actually using this input, which is nothing but, let's say, whenever there is a change actually happens inside this input event, I'll say that on change. Whenever there is an on change event actually happens on this input element, I'll write an handler function which handles this given particular event. I'll say handle value, which is nothing but for this given handle function. So I'll try to write this given handle function at this given point of time, where I'll say that this handle function as a const handle value should be actually equals to this actually takes this any event handler that actually takes event by default, where I just want to say console dot log e dot or event. I can say that event, or I can say event dot target dot value. So what does this event dot target dot value actually meant? Let's try to understand this event dot target dot value in a more close manner, which is nothing but this handle value is actually an handler function which actually handles any change in state variables. So that this given particular on change, or to be more precise, in the form of state variable, I can tell that. So I can say any change in input element, which is nothing but, go to this input element, click on to this inspect thing. There is this one error. Don't worry about that error. Let's say whatever I type, let's say hi. Welcome to the React sprint, which is nothing but whatever I'm actually typing here is actually console logging here, which is nothing but I'll say that this event.target.value, which is nothing but this event. Let's try to understand this step by step, because for any given handler function that actually handles any kind of an event, so that will be generated event, which is nothing but JavaScript or your browser will actually give an event object by default to these handler functions, where event is nothing but, event is nothing but your given function where it is written handle value. Event is nothing but the value it is mentioned on. It is mentioned on input tag. So event is nothing but handling event handle value, where target is actually, this handle value is actually present inside this input element. So target is nothing but your input element. Finally we have this value, which is nothing but in the inside of the input element, whatever thing that actually goes on, that should be actually changed with this particular value. That should be actually taken care, which is nothing but, if you observe this particular console log, let's say if I am typing something, let's say hello, you see hello is actually been console logged, because whatever value that is actually printed in this target thing, which is nothing but inside this input element, using this particular event is nothing but your handle value, then that will be actually logged. This is what meant by console log. This is nothing but whatever thing that is actually printed, or whatever value that is actually present inside this target element. Here the target element is input element. Here the handle value is actually present on this input element, right? That's why the target value is also your input element. And this event is nothing but this given particular function. Whenever an event actually happens, the event is nothing but, to be more precise, handle value, not there is this thing on change. To be more precise, this is the exact thing, which is nothing but whenever this event on change event actually happens, then this function is actually called. Once this function is actually called, then this event on change is which is currently actually happening on this given target input, will get the value, this given value that is actually present inside this target value, which is nothing but input value. That's why you'll see whatever I type, you see them in the console log itself. Let's say instead of writing it, I'll say that this is what makes you or your life great. If you observe, each of these letters is actually printed onto the console log itself. But the one other thing that I want you to observe is that here whatever I am typing, you can clearly see console is logging because I am actually typing on the keyboard. Whatever I am typing on this given input, it is actually not shown out, because by default this given value is actually an empty string, which is nothing but we are using this given state variable as the value that should be present by default inside this input value. That's why by default the value that should be present inside this input element should be an empty string, according to this our logic. So instead of writing this thing as console log, I'll write it in this way. I write it as set value, so is actually event dot target dot value, which is nothing but, so check let's say 90 set. Okay, wait. Any kind of logic I missed? Uh, so any kind of a thing that we missed. Mm, event dot target, event spelling event dot value, everything is fine. Whenever there is this thing, I'll say set. So okay, what is that one wrong that I, or one mistake that we made? Is there anything that we are actually changing these values? Input text value to be value, on change. Any wrong that we made? Um, is this function input counter? Yes, it is input counter. Where after this set count increment value to this one, set count increment value to this given thing as 2. Uh, let's try to, is there anything that we missed? I'll say try to give some kind of styling, because is actually equals to class name should be set. Let's try to give some styling. Whether is it a styling problem? I hope so not. Is there any mistake that we made? So I'll say that dot set be actually equals to the value of mm, so border 1 pixel solid. Finally, we'll give some kind of a padding, because that given particular item is actually very close. So okay, this value to this thing, nothing. Set this given particular value to this thing. Set the value to be the value, handling this given particular value, and there is this given button set. And after that, we have this on click event. Everything okay. Is there any wrong that we did? Or we need to include this value. So is there any wrong that anyone can guess the debug? Yes. Okay. Onset is not been declared. Okay, this set has to be actually changed. Okay, thank you for this debugging thing. So let's say mm, wait a minute. I think there is this problem with. Okay, wait. there is this problem with this event element itself. So there is this problem with the laptop itself. Wait a minute. It is not getting timed. Uh, I'm unable to move the laptop. I'm unable to move the laptop here in the screen. I'm unable to move. Count is actually going good, but yes, we are actually seeing the message. I just came back. My mouse is actually stuck. I mean, my mouse is actually stuck. Give me a minute. Yes, just developer things, guys, because all of a sudden I'm doing all of these things. So, yeah, add an on-click event. Okay, instead of making it more complicated, let's try to understand. No, if I disconnect and disconnect and reconnect, everything is lost. So, according to the settings that has made in this given thing, that is actually disconnected. When I disconnect and do this reconnect again, this particular thing will be lost. So instead I'll do one thing, creating this on click event here itself. Let's try to create a to-do app itself, to-do application itself. So I think yes, I'm trying to move my mouse, but this is actually stuck. But any which way, give me a minute, I'll just figure it out. Give me a minute. Give me a minute, guys. I think it is showing me. Sorry. I'll try to move my mouse at very great difficulty. Okay, let me just figure out the settings in a minute. I'll just come back. Wait.
And can I put it inside here because this guy only needs it. Okay, next input with counter .html counter .html particular input. Let's add input minus. Okay, with that we can have a button also. Okay, so let's say it says set. So with that, whatever value you enter, it says set. Whatever value, let's say 0, 100, this should be added to here. Okay, is this thing clear? Dot target dot value. Okay, so if you just go over here, inspect it, just go to console. Whenever I am typing something, let's say H. What's happening to it here? Handle value on change. There should be a E. Okay, so H. What happened to it? State variable. These are known as control component. Is this thing clear? Shall I repeat? Please ask me. I'll repeat that. Okay. Point is, Point is that twice. Just get it. Point is very simple. That first, when we talk about components. Sorry. This is how you have to work with input. These are input. So basically, you can also access your input value on your own. Okay, you can do that. Next, because here what we are doing, we are handling the UI update of input with state.
Am I audible? Yes. Yes, my mouse is actually working. Am I audible, right? Yes, sorry for this small disturbance. Sorry for this small disturbance. I'm audible and I'm visible. Sorry for this small glitch in the computer. It is actually happening due to this OBS Studio. But anyway, I'm back. Are you able to see me? Yes. Thanks. Okay, now let's try to understand this one single concept of growth or controlled component at this given point of time, and finally we'll go ahead and implement this controlled component, the concept of controlled component in the 2D application itself. So yes, my mouse is working. Do not rush your learnings language, so try to be very cool. So here, if you observe now, my main agenda here is that, okay, yeah, my main agenda is that whenever I should be clicking a button, let's say I'll add some value to it. Whenever I click this button, then I should update this given particular value, which is nothing but here I'm trying to actually change this given particular value. When there is an on click event that actually happens, I'll say handle click. There is this one event handle click where I'll say handle click is actually another given function where whenever there is this event of handle click, then we actually need to send this given particular handle value or any kind of this handle value to this particular count variable. So I'll say that, okay, instead of actually, okay, that's actually thing. Okay, instead of writing it here, okay, I'll just remove it. Wait a minute, I'll remove this handle click event. Let's try to understand this concept of controlled component. Then we'll try to implement it in 2D application itself. That would be very easy because at that given point of time, I'll be able to explain this control component event or this entire control component concept itself altogether in the concept of arrays, because that would be much more complicated and that would be actually satisfying my goal of explaining control components in much more larger context. So instead I'll just mention this one simple thing, which I'll say that this one single thing, when we control UI change, when we control any kind of an UI change of elements, like you can say that input, input using state, then these components are known to be control components, which is nothing but, in the above example, to be more clear, in the given above example, we have this handle value where once there is any kind of an handle value, we are actually trying to control this particular change event, that is actually happening on this given input element. We are going to handle that change event with this given particular function. Particularly, if you observe this handle value is actually using a set statement or set value, which is nothing but we are using state variables to control the UI of page, which is nothing but whenever there is this intervention of state variables in order to control the UI part. Then through a component, to be more precise, when we control UI changes of any element using this any state, using any of the component, like in this above example here I am using actually this on handle value with just one another component using this set value. So here this handle value is actually known as a control component. To be more precise, this entire input which we are actually taking, where we are handling the UI output, update on the input with the state, this is actually known as control component. We're going to see this kind of control components a lot when we start digging up or when we start utilizing building the React application. But before that, what's the time now? It's already 9. Okay, I'll end this session by explaining how do we actually leverage the concept of bundler, and in tomorrow's session we'll try to use these same concepts that we have learned today and build a nice to-do application. So let's say till this point, people, I think in the messages, someone asked me, sir, why are you not using actually this create React application? So till this point, okay, I'll do this one thing. So first I'll push this code. Wait, I'll push this code. Yeah, with status. Okay, I'll say get status. Okay, cd info to tech. First I'll try to push this code into this particular thing. I'll say get status. Okay, it is fine. I'll say get this, get in it, git add, I'll say set a repository. Okay, if you meant any submodules, how to obtain them, budget, git submodule add URL intro React. Once I'll say that, I'll say commit end of class 2. I think this is a class 3. Sorry. Git push origin must. Nothing but I need to go to this GitHub thing again. So wait a minute. And go to my repositories. Go React Sprint. I'll copy it and I'll say git remote add a good. I'll say git remote add origin 1. Git push origin 1 must. So there is this failed thing. Which contains work that you don't have. Git pull. Origin must one. So again it is failing. Okay, instead of telling this push as masters, I will very good product. But anyway, so leave it. that there is actually a twist in my Git repositories, but anyway, I'll figure it out and I'll send it to you. But now coming to this particular thing, till now we have used our index.html files or HTML files where we have used our script tags, imported this CDN links, and we have done with React work itself. But now it's a time. Now it's a time, I'll say, where we has our particular own visible. Now where we have our particular time where we can render these elements, to be more precise, where we can use these bundlers like Webpack or Beat or Parcel to actually generate things, which is nothing but clear. My keyboard is not working. Wait. So wait, this is actually not working close. Till now we have seen this one particular thing. Now at least at this given point of time, here is let's say so I'll say React. So let's try to see create this particular one project using this particular thing known as npm wheat latest. Okay, again my keyboard is not working. Come on. Okay, sorry. npm create wheat at the rate latest. It's create. So this particular one single command is actually similar to this one particular project like npx create react app space project. Similarly, this npm create wheat at the rate of latest, it is actually known as a bundler because previously we are actually coding each and every part. Even to render the element, we are actually using react dom.render and sort of thing. But these bundlers are pre-coded and are given to us by the developers where we can create any kind of React apps using these bundlers itself. Currently in the market, Vite is actually used because it is much more faster. It has ENSLIT and it has hot module reloading. So at this point of time, do not worry about it. I'll explain that entire thing from in tomorrow's session. But at this point of time, let's try to name the project name to be e-commerce. I'll say e-commerce to be more precise. Now after that it asks us to select the framework. So our framework would be something. Okay, everything is messed up. Sorry. Remove. Okay, npm create wheat at the rate. Sorry. At the rate latest. Project name to be e-commerce. Okay, again my keyboard is not working. What is actually happening with my computer? Vanshdeep, I'll actually tell about this tomorrow, or else I'll do one this thing. So I'll end my session at this given point of time, where in tomorrow's session we also see about bundler. How do we create, analyze this any given structure of any React application. After that, we'll see how do we actually structure for any given React application. How do we draw components? Let's say whenever you're building any component, what is that one thing that you need to learn to actually build the component itself for any given React application. So we all learn about them in tomorrow's session. So that's it for this session. If you have any kind of a doubt, you can ask me. And sorry that all of a sudden my computer is actually lagging a lot. I need to figure it out. So by tomorrow you will feel or you'll have a very decent experience, not an hassle experience like today. I'm very sorry for that, but we are done with the session. If you have any kind of doubt, you can ask me. Otherwise, you can leave the session. Thank you. No, no, no. We are not using Vue. We are actually using White. To be more precise. detailedly we have to talk about these bundlers and all of this thing. All of a sudden my keyboard is not that working, so we are not going to use Linux, we are not going to use Vue itself. Thank you, Linux. Thank you. So if you have any kind of a doubt, you can ask me. Otherwise, you can leave the class. So, sir, if you don't mind, I have a request. Please state your organization. The one important thing, Chendu, is that if we try to break down in 1 hour, it would be very tough to to connect the things or connect the dot between the concepts. That's actually the problem. That's why I'm actually leveraging for two-hour sessions, because that's the reason. Sprint session days will not be increased. That's what I told by this given particular organizers of this given sprint. So yeah, that's why I have to take 2 hour or 2.5 hour sessions. It's already 2 hours, but yeah, but to learn all of these things in a one sync, I need to actually teach them. Thank you, thank you. Yes, Nisi, to deliver the best to you, I'm actually taking these 2 hours, but so React is too complex to learn, too easy to learn. So that's why I'm taking too much time. Mm. Thank you all, and bye.